you know, part of the job of being a moderator around here is you're expected to be able to run a marathon. I used to be able to do that, but it's a bit harder these days. So I'm going to ask you, Mr. Honourable Minister, if you could join us up here. I know Carmen will. Carmen, I think, has run the same marathon. So we were presenting at the other end of the site, and well, things didn't seem to connect in between. So that's. I hope you'll forgive me for that. But we are, I hope, going to have a very interesting panel today, and I'll ask you to also make some allowances for Silvia, who's just come the same marathon route, and I'm. So we're going to have the. My name's Don Bundy. I'm the director of the Research Consortium for School Health and Nutrition. And I'm the moderator for this session today. And this is our excellent panel. I'm just going to quickly introduce them. Although actually they're all named up there. So Silvia, who is the pen holder, the lead, the person that made this paper that I'm going to talk about in a minute happen. Marco is the brains behind the modelling that goes into the paper, and I don't know what he's going to talk about because that's what he does. Is that right, Marco? And then I'm awfully pleased that we have the Honourable Minister for Basic and Senior Secondary Education from Sierra Leone, who's going to talk a little bit about how education and climate come together in the context of Sierra Leone. And then we're going to wrap up with our great friend Carmen Burbano, who is the director of the school feeding programs at the United Nations World Food Programme, and also responsible for the Secretariat for the School Meals Coalition. Right, so we're going to get going straight away. I'll want to move this forward. So, and with slides, somebody is going to show those. Somebody going to show those slides? Okay, well, you could just put the first one up if you don't mind. And I'm going to show you something else, actually. There we go. So some things have arrived on time, so that's always good. So, well, if anybody would like a flyer, we have some of those too, so that's pretty good. Some marathons are worth running, I suppose. Sonia, can you help with that? Okay. This is what we're going to talk about. This is the school meals and food systems, rethinking the consequences for climate, environment, biodiversity, and food sovereignty. So this is a thought piece that started more than a year ago when people started asking the question, if we're going to talk about school meals, don't we also need to think about the food systems that provides those meals, and also talk about how that can be sustainable in a modern world? And why were we talking about school meals at all? Because of the creation of the School Meals Coalition. I don't know how many of you are fully aware of that, but the big message from that is it's actually the most resilient and most extensive thing that's come out of the COVID pandemic. And I can speak as a health expert and say that on the health side, there's nothing comparable to the big reaction that there has been worldwide to closing schools and putting 1.5 billion children out of the school system. That school closure, something that's never happened at any time in the world's history before as a global event, was catastrophic for education. We're still feeling the effects. Children today who've gone through that are still problematical, and many education systems haven't got back to normal yet. We know all that. But also it was a politically terrible thing to happen. Suddenly, parents found they had to look after their children instead of their children going to school. Suddenly, parents found a whole different way of life during the pandemic. Meanwhile, it was also apparent that many of the things that we do for school children and adolescents, we do through schools. And if you shut the schools, you can't do them, or you can't afford to do them in the same way. So all of that has driven this amazing school meals coalition. Now 96 countries, Uganda just joined, I think, 96 countries, so a huge global effort to rebuild schools and to rebuild school systems that support the well-being of learners in school. And that's the framing, but because of this interest, and 1 year after all of those closures, the number of school children being fed every day is 418 million every day. 418 million children are fed in schools. That's actually 30 million more than before COVID, and it keeps rising. So it's a huge effort. And so one of the questions was, what does that imply for the sustainability of programs to feed those children? These are the countries, the 96. Oh, it's out of date, it says 95, sorry about that. Just can't keep up. That's the coalition. The consortium, next slide. The consortium is a research consortium. The bosses are the 96 countries, a small secretariat at the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine, so that's where I am, but a set of global communities of practice. I really encourage anyone in this room who's really interested in this area, who in an academic sense, a technical sense, or a practical sense, to be part of these communities of practice. And one of these communities of practice, the Diet and Food Systems Community of Practice, is the one that has taken the lead on developing this report. Next slide, please. These are the communities of practice that exist at present, these 6, and I just wanted to illustrate this a little bit to give you a sense. The real challenge is to create communities of practice that are truly global, to get away from a northern-dominated approach to this. And it's therefore really important that you help us co-create these groups. These are groups of hundreds of people interested in particular topic areas. As I say, we've got these 6 communities now. There's a new one just being created, actually by our latest chair of the coalition, Brazil, a new community of practice that will focus on how artificial intelligence can contribute to planning and implementing school feeding programs. It's a perfect use for AI, frankly, because they're so complex. Right. Last year, so Diet and Food Systems is really the lead on the background to this document. Next slide, please. And what happened here is that as it became apparent that these issues were really important, and you'll see they're not all climate issues in the direct sense. They're environmental issues as well as climate issues. A very broad number of issues important here. As those emerged, we decided we would work across all of the communities of practice to see the potential of school meals to unlock food system transformation to respond to these key areas. So the next slide, please. Yes, oh dear. So this is Valerie Guarneri, the Deputy Director of the World Food Programme. And this is just to say, this is part of a process that's been going on for a year, a discussion process which hasn't finished. This is not the finished book. It says on it, conference copy. What we're trying to do is keep this alive, keep contributing to it. We're learning as we go along with this. 85 organizations are part of creating this report, 160 authors. So just to say, and that's not just to prove that we've been listening to people, it's because the areas are so broad that come into this topic, as we'll soon see. Today, we're continuing with that process. Please go on the web anytime you like and do send us any updates you would like to suggest. And we're going to start that process with Silvia, Silvia is the pen holder, that's the UN term for the person that gets to do all the work, to pull this together. And I'm going to ask Silvia now to explain to all of us what's involved.
Yes, so thank you, Don. I wanted to thank you people who came here to this session, and also the collaborators and the authors for this report, and there have been a lot of those. More than 160 people has helped to make this report come alive. I want to talk about why I want to frame the problems. So we are living through a nutrition crisis. In one hand, the malnutrition affects most people, partly as hunger, food insecurity, on the other hand, as obesity and chronic disease related to diets. And at the same time, the way we eat, the way we produce and consume foods has altered the equilibrium on the planet, cause destruction, pollution, natural resources, loss of biodiversity, and climate change. And this, in turn, have further increased food insecurity and our ability to produce food for a growing population. This environmental and nutrition crisis significantly affect children. There with more than 1 billion children at risk of food insecurity, and this is going to compromise their future, their education, and their development. So school meals are a unique opportunity to address multiple challenges, actually all of the challenges that I mentioned. School meals are the most extensive publicly funded food system that, as Don say, feeds 418 million worldwide. And the benefit of nutrition of school meal go way beyond nutrition. They improve education attainment, cognitive development, they decrease dropout rate, decrease social inequalities, especially for girls. And this, and also because of these school meals programs are often national school meal programs, which are funded by government. The policy levers are in the hands of national governments, and because of the reach and scales, this is an exceptional opportunity to implement some of these policies with far-reaching co-benefit for health, environment, and economic development and the planet. And that's also the reason why investment in school meal program have such a great return in investment, because the return are across multiple platforms, and this is across education, environment, health, nutrition, social security. But government, so what we did in white paper, we wanted to look at what are the best policies for government to apply and to make this possible in the real life. So we analyzing the situation, is what came up is there are policies that the government can change immediately, that have an immediate effect on the health of children and also some immediate effect on the planet. And then there are other policies that leverage the power of procurement that can lead to food system transformation. They can be an entry point for food system transformation. So the first set of policies, as I say, is going to affect, has the ability to affect all children, all youth that attend school. This is to enable them to be the agent of change. And as I said, like school meals are important for education and health, but it is like increasingly there is a recognition that nutrition is extremely important for development, not just for the first 1,000 years, but also for the following 7,000 days of life, what we now call the first 8,000 days of life. And the benefit of education, as I say, are really far, go beyond nutrition. But there is another reason why it's so important to make planet-friendly policy, is because this is an age where children develop food preferences and social norms that they can carry on into their adulthood. So this is an exceptional opportunity to really optimize the synergistic investment in health and education to allow for children to develop into adults that can make better choices for the future. These are like the key policy that we identified that having the greatest benefits for people and the planet. And the people and planet health, the first and foremost is a change to what children eat, a change to menus. A planet-friendly diet is a diet that is diverse, nutritionally rich, culturally relevant, and that is based on whole food, is based on minimally processed foods, and which address macronutrients, nutrition. This is a diet that is possible across the world. It includes things like fruit, vegetables, legumes, nuts, and seeds, and whole grain. It is also important to encourage climate resilient foods, which are context specific, that adapt well to the local context in terms of land and environment and climate. The second point is enabling clean cooking and energy efficient cooking for all, which is powered by renewable energy. And this is particularly important in certain contexts, such as low income setting where traditional open fire cooking is still widely practiced. This will have enormous benefit for the health of the cook and also decreasing deforestation. Third is decreasing food loss and waste and decreasing package waste. About 1/3 of all the food that is produced is actually lost or wasted. This obviously is an enormous loss for the economy, and it represents a huge impact on the environment. We know actual benefit. And lastly, but not least important, is to encourage a holistic food education in school that is available to all children at all grades. A food education that enables children to understand the interconnectedness across the environment, health, and the food system, so that they will be able to make practical choices in the now and in the future. And the second part of the strategy for government, it's also very key, because this is where they can really make food system transformation. This is leveraging the power of procurement as an entry point for food system transformation. By creating the demand for nutrition, dietary diverse diets that are produced in a sustainable way, that doesn't exploit natural resources and encourage biodiversity, government can create the demand across food producers to make this possible. They can also create procurement rules that encourage local producers and encourage smallholder farmers, so that they can help local development, and they can help local economy, especially an economy as smallholder farmers, that is to help youth and women, especially in places where in low-income countries, low middle-income countries, but actually everywhere. And these are some of the policy. Obviously, all of this, by all means, is not an extensive list. When you're going to read the paper, there are going to be many policies. These are just some of the policies which we wanted to highlight here. One policy, the key is to try to source food for school from ecologically farmed systems that help to regenerate soils, that increase agrobiodiversity and promote biodiversity, and also that empower local farmers. Things like agroecology, regenerative agriculture. There are multiple ways to do that. And also, as an important first step, to put these rules in the procurement policy at all levels of the government, the government procures. Okay. As I say, you can read more in the paper. So this is the next step. We want all of you, and we want you to spread the word and encourage all the stakeholders involved, all the policymakers, anybody that is involved in any way at government level, to read the paper, to spread the word. This is a very practical paper. It is not only an academic paper. Actually, more than 40 case studies are in the white paper to bring it alive, to show what is possible to achieve. And also, it's a working paper. So we cherish feedback, and we want to hear more case studies, and we work with countries at all levels to make this possible. And any feedback, please send it to my email, but also you can reach to the Research Consortium, to all the Research Consortium practice. And
excellent. Thank you very much, Silvia.
Sorry for the overrun.
We just to reinforce that, we really want to hear from you. So
yeah.
do write in. Time is our enemy, I'm afraid. I'm going to actually, Marco, I'm just going to skip you for the moment and go to His Excellency Minister Conrad Sackey to hear a little bit more about the situations in Sierra Leone. And I'm just going to say I lived for 8 years in the Caribbean, which means I know something about the beaches, other things as well, but certainly beaches. But I have to say that the best beaches I have ever seen anywhere are in Sierra Leone. It's true, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
You're going to have us visiting soon.
Yeah, we should have a conference there. So,
may I
please
borrow your days? Mr. Moderator, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, first of all, let me start off by welcoming you to Sierra Leone in advance. We can do with the business, and so this is just a party political broadcast.
Very good.
Okay. So I'm going to cover school feeding in Sierra Leone. So the question really was that Sierra Leone has recently begun to introduce planet-friendly school feeding practices, and I will describe these practices for you. Sierra Leone government and the World Food Programme are investing in school feeding as part of the Free Quality School Education Programme. Investing in school feeding is a powerful tool for growth, as efficient feeding programs yield a return of up to $9 for every $1 invested. We have already heard from other distinguished speakers this afternoon on the ways in which the food provided in school meal programs can be made more sustainable to promote planetary and population health. The way in which this food is being prepared represents another important consideration in this discussion. And I will address how the Ministry of Basic and Senior Secondary School Education and partners have addressed this issue today. In Sierra Leone, whilst the feeding program caters to approximately 750,000 children, it has been relying on traditional cooking methods that contribute to high levels of air pollution and has impacts on not only the health of students and teachers, but also the climate. Indeed, the reliance of many across the world of biomass fuels for cooking, including firewood, charcoal, and plant residuals, is an important contributor to carbon emission. About 1 gigaton of carbon dioxide equivalent is produced every year from burning wood fuels, accounting for about 2% of global emissions, roughly the same share as aviation. Every day, some 2.3 billion people cook their meals using biomass fuel, which is the lowest access rate to clean cooking fuels and technologies in sub-Saharan African countries. As well as the environmental and health impact, in many of these countries, cooking fuel are usually supplied by children and their families. They either collect or purchase firewood, a time-consuming task, an economic burden that has detrimental effects on school performance and attendance. In Sierra Leone, a staggering 98% of the population still rely heavily on biomass and charcoal for cooking. Despite years of efforts to spread the use of improved technology, key challenges relating to high cost and cultural resistance are standing in the way of broader adaptation of clean stoves and fuel. Thus, clean cooking remains a luxury accessible only to a small minority. In response to this, the government of Sierra Leone is stepping up its efforts to increase access and use of clean fuels as part of its commitment to the Paris Climate Agreement. In 2021, the government set out to increase the share of the population that uses gas for cooking from less than 1% to 25% by 2030. As part of this response, Sierra Leone has committed to increasing access to the Wonder Stove, an insulated metal contraption designed to cook food faster and better at containing heat. Whilst Wonder Stoves are not as clean as gas or electric appliances, they provide an important step in ascending the clean energy ladder and representing a significant improvement for people who rely on burning biomass. Schools are contributing to the detrimental health and climate impact of inefficient cooking methods due to the large quantities of food cooked for school meals. However, as we have already heard this morning, and as detailed in the policy paper, school feeding programs can be a powerful tool for food system transformation to tackle these challenges. Thus, the Ministry of Basic and Senior Secondary School Education has been contributing to the national effort to mainstreaming clean cooking technology by working closely with partners, primarily the World Food Programme, to increase access to fuel-efficient cook stoves in schools through school feeding programs. I am pleased to share with you today our experiences so far relating to these efforts. Thus far, the important work has been conducted by the MBSSC with strong collaboration with technical support from WFP to roll out fuel-efficient stoves in schools. And at the heart of these efforts is partnership across local, district, and national levels. The Ministry has held a coordinating role by connecting districts to various implementing partners involved. And MBSSC, which is the Ministry, has also provided partners with annual school assessment lists and enrollment numbers. The stoves themselves were provided to schools by a Sierra Leonean business, West Wind Energy, and the purchase of stoves from local women-led business makes this initiative sustainable beyond reduction in emissions, contributing to multiple other SDGs relating to social and economic indicators. West Wind also provided support through installing the institutional stoves and providing important training to volunteer cooks on usage and maintenance. Using WF implementing school feeding program, 111 fuel-efficient stoves have so far been provided to 55 schools, 2% schools. Prior to the introduction of this technology, efforts were made to better prepare schools for clean cooking through the construction of kitchens, with materials provided and the construction being delivered voluntarily by the community stakeholders. Now, these initiatives have been embedded in the government's investment and financial plan, which WFP helped develop for school feeding. So far, how do we capitalize on this progress and scale up efforts to broaden stove access to schools across the country? A key challenge is the high cost of fuel-efficient stoves. One stove costs about $1,300, and the average school will require 2. Beyond initial purchase, an annual running cost for maintenance and replacement are required, as well as this effort are required to ensure that people in schools are trained to use the stoves properly. I know I've run out of time. So at this stage, if you do give me 1 minute, I'll just finish. These costs and barriers have thus far limited the extensive rollout of fuel-efficient stoves, and we appeal to partners to support this work and to support clean cooking to reach more schools across the country. Although the important steps have been made, with the pivotal support from WFP and other partners, we are still in the initial stages of this initiative, and further investment is much needed. I thank you so much.
Thank you. Excellent. And it is, it troubles me because this is amazing work. It's it's a really important work for 98% of the folk. Now, I'm hoping we can just carry on until we're thrown out. Is that? Yes, please. I'm going to now introduce. I'm going to introduce Professor Springman, who is going to present some preliminary work on modelling the impact of climate issues on through the school meals lens. And I want to say this very specifically: is that Marco did the analysis for the Eat Lancet series. I don't know if you've read that. And we asked him to do the same thing, but now for school-age children specifically. So this isn't about the whole population, but for school children. Thank you, Marco. So very interested in this preliminary work. Yeah.
Sorry for keeping you a bit longer, but I'm going to show you some of the estimates of what we did. So the question was very much, or the task was to assess the impacts of the School Meal Coalition Pledge, which is to provide a healthy meal for every child in school by 2030. For that, we put together detailed scenarios that look at enrollment rates currently and in 2030. We put together 2 health analyses at undernourishment and chronic disease risk, comprehensive environmental analysis that looked at changes in greenhouse gas emissions, land use, water use, and water pollution, and the cost analysis that looked at cost of meals, but also the cost of climate change and healthcare costs that are associated with dietary changes at school. Here are the headline findings of our analysis. We found that meeting the School Meal Coalition Pledge could reduce undernourishment by about 26%, reduce diet-related disease risk and mortality by about 16%, and reduce environmental impacts by over 50%. So really big numbers here. How did we come to these? So first of all, on the undernourishment side, so having basically an additional meal, having a meal at school for a kid, most of the time represents having an additional meal basically in the whole household. This can be expressed as changes in calorie intake, and this has really tremendous impacts on the risk of undernourishment, specifically in low-income countries and lower middle-income countries. We estimate that could lift 120 million out of undernourishment, just having this additional meal at school in those lower income countries. And that's a reduction of 25%. And you see here the distribution regionally. At the same time, healthy meals can also impact health in adulthood if the dietary composition learned at school is adhered to later on. And here we modeled how that would, what that would do to that cohort at school, but going forward to 2050. And you can see here that if they learned at school well-composed eating of flexitarian diets, vegetarian diets, vegan diets, all with plenty of fruits, vegetables, legumes, nuts and seeds, whole grains, and so on, then indeed we could see reductions in the diet-related disease risk of heart disease, stroke, cancer, and type 2 diabetes, and the deaths would be summed together to get you a reduction of over 16%. And you see here that in all regions you can find these reductions. So this is well distributed, and the total is a reduction of 3 million deaths in 2050, 16%. Lastly, with more school meals, with an increased coverage of school meals, of course, come an increased coverage also of environmental impacts. So suddenly, if you change school meals, you have a bigger portion of the environmental pie, so to say, to play for. And you can see that the environmental impacts covered by school meals would increase by globally a factor of 4, and in low-income countries even by a factor of 19. So that means you have really a big opportunity to change the impacts covered by school meals. We estimated if you would halve food loss and waste at school, then that would mean a reduction in the environmental impacts of greenhouse gas emissions, land use, freshwater use, eutrophication, which is a measure of water pollution, anywhere between 10 and 13%. And the biggest impact we actually identified for changes in the food or in the meal composition of school meals. Here you can see that if instead of adhering to current global or national dietary guidelines, if you went to more comprehensive recommendations, that part of which we developed in the Eat Lancet Commission on Healthy Diets from Sustainable Food Systems, then you could have reductions in greenhouse gas emissions that exceed 50%, you could have reductions in land use that exceed 80%, you could have reductions in freshwater use that exceed 25%, and over 50% reduction in eutrophication. So really big aspects here. And you can see again, or if you pair the reductions, the benefits from halving food loss and waste and the change in meal composition, you get a really good distribution of reductions in environmental pollution and resource use all around the world. I want to leave you with 2 challenges, however. So one is, of course, not all of this comes for free. We estimated that in higher income countries, actually providing healthy school meals can pay for itself by just spending less on basically expensive animal source foods. In low income countries, however, this might need to be compensated by, for example, reductions in food loss and waste, but also it might pay back through reduced healthcare costs. But the big portion here is really basically extending the coverage and the provision of school meals. And that is really the second challenge I want to leave you with. It's not only basically increasing the coverage, but before you got to increase also enrollment. In low-income countries at the moment, only a third of school children are actually enrolled at school, and only a quarter of that third is actually getting school meals. So there are really important structural changes here. But my last slide, I want to go back to this and say that I think it's well worth it. We identified really substantial health benefits and environmental benefits, and let's try to work together to make it a reality. We produced country-level results for all countries with a really comprehensive set of school meal scenarios. We will share them together with the research paper, but if you want to have access to them before, please get in touch, and we're always happy to share. If you have any other comments, please write to me, and thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. Well, plenty of food for thought there, and I want to say to our Honourable Minister that if Sierra Leone wanted some Sierra Leone specific numbers, we'd be very happy to work with you on that. But I'm going to leave the final word actually to Carmen Burbano, who's done such a fantastic job creating the School Meals Coalition.
Well, I think, Don, on behalf of the School Meals Coalition, really, the Research Consortium has done an extraordinary job trying to explain first of all, what the benefits could be of scaling up these programs around the world, and the numbers that you've just presented, Marco, are extraordinary. So we're very much looking forward to working with a lot of the countries of the coalition, including Sierra Leone. An hour and a half ago, we heard from Kenya. We have Rwanda, we have Honduras, we have Benin, we have Bangladesh. These are countries that are talking about these issues at scale. Kenya just mentioned their intention to reach 10 million children with climate-friendly school meals. So these are not small numbers. These are not little projects, as you've just mentioned, Minister. This is 100% of the population in schools. This is in many cases 20 or 30% of the population in a country. So we're talking about these massive changes because of the cohorts of population that we're talking about. So thank you so much for illustrating how transformative this agenda can be, and how the research that you're providing and producing can really inform the decisions that ministers are making in terms of some of these policies. We look forward to continuing to work with you in the coalition and in the Research Consortium in the years to come. Thanks.
Brilliant. Let me say a big thank you to Silvia, to Marco, to the Honourable Minister, and to Carmen, and to you all for staying the course and for paying close attention, as I can see. So thank you very much. Let's give us all a clap. Thank you very much.